Perfect. So, welcome to part one of our four-part book club on The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck. This book I personally found to be extremely powerful. Listening to especially the first part, The Dark Wood of Error, which is what we're here to kind of unpack today. I feel like I saw my whole life, like my so much of especially my late teens and 20s, and even now seeing where I am still a bit in the dark wood of error. And so yeah, like it has been very, very powerful to walk through the very approachable exercises that she outlines in the book and the little bit of humor that she brings to it. Try to lighten the mood a little bit, which I appreciate, because essentially she's talking about the dark wood of error is kind of like being in denial away from like our true nature. Like that was probably one of my favorite parts in that first section was how she defined and broke apart culture as opposed to our nature, and how like culture teaches us right and wrong and like how we're supposed to be and what the recipe for success looks like and like all these things that sound like, when you're rich and successful then you'll be happy, or when you're married with kids then you'll be happy, when you're retired and can be free of the grind then you'll be happy. And she calls that Mount Delectable, which is such a perfect, actually, she based the whole thing off of Dante's Inferno, the Divine Comedy. So those are the four sections that she like structures the book. And in the Dark Wood of Error, um, like you're kind of wandering around, like following the rules of your culture and not getting the outcomes that you want. Like for me, that definitely reminded me of working at the software company, like after I graduated, and um, and how by all earthly definitions, I was very successful and hollow and miserable on the inside and felt like my job is draining my soul out of my body. So that's obviously not what you want. And yet I had all the things that they told me I should want. And so I think that is kind of the starting point of these journeys towards integrity, is waking up inside of a reality where you're not getting what you want. It doesn't feel good. She talks about like dark wood of error syndrome, where you can like find the symptoms of like what are the types of outcomes you would have if you have been lost in the dark wood of error for a while. It's like physical deterioration, relationship failure, job failure. Like there's so many different, basically any aspect of your life could continuously crumble and collapse when you're building it based on a foundation of culture, doing it the way that you should be doing it instead of following your own true nature. So that's like a very high level look at like the dark wood of error. And then the way of integrity, I love that at the very end of that first part she says, but I've found another way, the way of integrity, and it's surprisingly gentle. And it really is. Like the whole rest of the book is so gentle and go at your own pace and kind of move through the truth that you're ready to face when you're ready to face it. Like you're not going to come out of the dark wood of error all at once. Like it's like one little piece at a time that gets moved on in the process, is kind of my understanding, because I feel like I've been doing this for years at this point, and still as I did the exercises and whatever, I'm like I still have stuff inside of me that I refuse to face. And she's like, that's a sign, that's a gate to hell, as she puts it towards the end of the first part. So yeah, how I see the rest of this going, I mean, it is book club. I would love it if we could get some conversation going. That'd be really cool. um, though not required, I would say. But I would love to hear if anybody wants to share as far as like what were some aha moments or like standout parts from the first section that like spoke to you and where you are now. Um, so I see like a conversation like that at some point if we feel like sharing. And then I also have like a few questions from like pulling out of the exercises that were like throughout the 4 chapters of part 1, um, that we can spend some time with. And I'm happy to do all the talking if I need to and tell my part of my experience of working with the book. But again, I would love to get some conversation going if you guys want to share. So, with that, does anybody want to share big takeaways or like pieces of the first part, Dark Wood of Air, that really spoke to you?
I think when she was talking about how everything's a hustle, everything that, and I never thought about it like that, because we are taught to do certain things and you feel that you're approaching life in such a good way, but that in itself could be a hustle because you're trying to elicit some reaction, even if it's someone's going to think I'm a good person, and my different pursuits, even if it's what I decide to go to school for or my job, this is going to be approved of by other people, and that's a hustle. It's not just a negative term, or a negative thing rather. It's just we're always doing these things for some kind of feedback. So that got my attention, and I started thinking about how I do that. Another thing that stood out is when she was talking to people that were really driven, like the billionaire, I think, and how empty he felt. And she asked, or name a time or tell me about a time when you were really happy. And it's when he had nothing and he was on, I think, some kind of camping trip or some kind of trip with a buddy. And that was when he was most joyful. But he got so deep into his pursuit of riches or trying to fill something that he didn't even understand what she was talking about when she pointed out, well, remember when you were so happy when you didn't have anything? And there was a denial there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm trying to find him in areas of my life. So am I not recognizing certain things in my pursuit of what I think I should be doing? So yeah, it's very relatable, really helpful.
Totally. Oh, the culture that it just ends up looping in our head of like, yeah, like she tells a different story, or maybe it was the same story about the guy that made $200 million in one day. And he's like, when will it be enough?
Same guy, same dude.
Okay. It's like, how, and that was another piece of advice that she gave, was like, if what you're doing isn't working, don't do it harder. And that was, yes, like how she said about, she went to Harvard and she got her bachelor's and she wasn't happy yet, so then she got a master's and then she was even less happy, so I'll get a PhD and like let me get and the least happy at the end of so like, if what you're doing isn't working, don't do it harder. But I feel like that is so hard to see, like in the moment, like you think that what you're doing is the right thing. Like that's the whole reason that Mount Delectable was like, you're trying to get up to where this is where I'll be happy when I'm up there.
Yeah.
And the people that she talked about who basically live up there, and they're like, there is no there. It's empty, it's nothing, it's a hologram, it doesn't exist. So yeah, like that piece, the hustle, that like you could be hustling to get people to like you.
Yep.
That's the one that I'm like, guilty. I do that. And yesterday I had an experience where I was a little bit on edge and I had to go into a meeting, and we were together for 4 hours. So it was like a really intense amount of peopling. And I was already kind of low in my energy and I didn't have the reserves to soften what I said or like couch it in some special way to where they'll be able to take it in and it'll feel good for them. So then they'll like me and they'll be open to what I'm saying. Like not having the energy to do that only showed me like how much I'm always fucking doing that. Like every
Yes.
goddamn time I'm doing that. It's like a constant process that's running to like make
Yeah.
myself likable.
All that energy.
All that energy.
And I think, doesn't she mention something about, is it their opinion, depending on the situation, of course, like maybe not a work situation, but is their opinion of you that important? Does it truly matter? And that you would sacrifice all that energy to get what? Because there's no there.
There's
That's
no
not gonna, yeah, it's not gonna.
well, and I think like you bring up a good point. Like, does their opinion actually matter? And from like a true nature perspective, no, I don't think it does. But culture teaches us that it's like freaking life or death. That like, especially for some cultures, some genders, some marginalized groups,
Yes.
like
Oh,
learning to fly under the radar is like a survival skill. Learning to be likable is like learning how to dodge bullets, like how to
yes.
stay safe. And so you can't blame a person for like going with culture. Like you see why people wake up having slept walked into the dark wood of air.
Yep.
Like they Liz Gilbert calls Mount Delectable good guess mountain. Like good guess doing what you thought was going to make you feel safe and secure. Like we do our best and that's all we can ever do. And then when you figure out there's no there, then that's like I think the moment when you wake up in the dark, what am I doing?
Yeah.
What am I even doing here? Why do
Yeah.
I stay at this job if it's killing me? Why am I doing this?
Because there's physical ramifications too, that she pointed out.
Yeah.
Illnesses, unexplained illnesses, because in different ways, your body's going to tell you, you're on the wrong path. I think that happens to a lot of people, me
Yeah.
included. It's a physical thing.
Like you
And
kind of
to
get
your
oh go
point
ahead.
about the people that struggle because they have to do all that extra, that's, they do have to do that. I how could some people succeed without having to do the extra work, though? I don't mean to go down that, because she really didn't.
I no, I think that's extremely valid. I think there's yeah, like we live in an earth plane. Like it's a physical plane where there are limitations on everything, technically. There's
Mhm.
only so much oxygen, there's only so much food, there's only so like that's the whole point of like physical existence. And I don't I don't think it was in this book. Might have been in something else, but like basically, oh no, it definitely wasn't. It was in the Light Seers Tarot on one of the cards where she says, like, no matter what the limitation is that's facing us, like, it's always our choice on like, how to respond to that limitation, how to get creative with it. Do we feel beat down by it or do we feel inspired to get to come up with a solution to it? Like this is a very lofty, very abstract perspective,
Okay.
but I do think that like kind of some of those limitations that like the cards that you were dealt,
Mhm.
it's like that wasn't a punishment. That's like your homework. Like do something about this, like figure out how to transcend and help the others figure out how to transcend, like I don't know, I think it's like all in perspective, like so many
Yeah.
things, like how you look at it. But I do think that that's like such a good point, and actually reminds me of a different book that I just started yesterday called Power by Kemi. Her last name, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pronounce it. Kemi Nekvapil. Oh my gosh, I don't know. I'll link it in the description. But that's like kind of what the book is about, is like moving from feeling like your relationship with power is basically that you are powerless, and then moving into, like, she starts out by redefining what power even is and how it does truly belong to all of us and how to come from that place. And I feel like it's like a cool kind of side by side with this book, because so much of what Martha Beck is asking for in the way of integrity is like using your courage to face things that like are literally too hard to face. That's why you don't want to face them.
Mhm.
Like, how the hell are you supposed to do that? And so it just feels like kind of this power book on the side is like how to like reframe your relationship with power, and yeah, like how to be powerful enough to, I mean, not like deny that the limitations are there, because they clearly are. I mean, there are issues abound in this physical reality as far as like people are not treated equally. We aren't born equal as far as culture is concerned. But again, from a true nature perspective, yes, we are. Yes, we are. We are equal, and we all have power, and we all get to decide what we do with that. And yeah, I think it is relevant, because that's kind of what she says, as far as like, if you want to stay in denial and you want to just like go about your distractions and like keep doing what you're doing, no problem.
Right.
Do that and tell whatever story you want to tell.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if you want to face the music of your true nature, like you got to enter the inferno. You got to like go through the hell gate. And
yes, that's right. It does take courage.
it's hard. That's the whole point. That's why we didn't already do it, is because it's hard. Right. So like a let yourself off the hook kind of moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all in.
I'm all in.
Why not? I'm going in.
You know what? Like, that's the beauty of when you are ready. Like she says, she absolutely threw her life away, but it was no big loss. The life she had sucked, and she threw it away and like built a different one.
Yeah,
and
sometimes if your life sucks, it's easier to go, yeah, let's try this.
That's how I started.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing left to lose. There's nowhere to go but up. So why not? Why not try what she's saying? Like, I haven't tried that yet. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'll work on that. I can do that. I think it's easier. Like, when you have other options, then it's so much easier to take the other option. And
of course, yeah.
Yeah. It's
when
like,
you're comfortable.
Exactly.
Motivator.
And I feel like that's kind of what the astrology of today is doing. Like, obviously, this isn't astrology related, but the transits that we're having, like, pretty much all this year and going on into the future, it's like they're taking away the other options. They're taking away like the physical security blankets that we were previously using to distract ourselves, like the pandemic putting everybody on lockdown. Like, that was a huge moment of like, are you going to face your hell gates? Because now you have all the time in the world to do that. And people were miserable, rightfully so, because those hell gates were probably way louder than they were before, like with all the distraction of normal life, quote unquote, pre-2020 pandemic. Yeah, like you don't look at that. You just stay away from it, distract yourself. And then those distractions go away one by one. And yeah, it's like, if you can embrace the process, then at least then you're not fighting the process. That's like one little bit of resistance that you can take out of it, is I'm just going to accept that, like, I pretty much look at it like I don't go looking for hell gates. I don't march right up to them. I'm not trying to do that. But if there's a thought that upsets me, clearly there's something there that, what is this? What's happening here? Why is this upsetting to me? And like how she mentions at the very end, like the only way out is through, like your no-go zones, like your do not mention zones of, I don't want to look at those things. And she says, like, if there are things that are gonna like unglue you, then please go get a therapist and
Yeah.
get yourself some support to like walk through that gate and look at that truth. I really resonated with that. Like I've definitely needed therapy in multiple seasons of my life where, yeah, I'm spiraling in on myself and this is clearly not going anywhere productive. So please help me.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what she says in the inner teacher chapter of like, all you got to do is ask for help and the teacher appears like as soon as you know, I need help, when you can like admit that out loud, and then there is help. There's there's something that can show up, a book or a person or whatever, that gives you like me, obviously not the whole thing, but like enough of a piece to like hook up
Right.
with that inner teacher.
Yeah. Do you have any examples of that in your own life or anything when you were
Like the
reading?
do not mention zones.
Well, the teacher maybe, or the help, or any kind of synchronicity when you that appeared when you needed it.
Yeah,
Did you recall anything when you were reading?
totally. um so I think probably the most significant one was like that moment where I felt like I had nothing to
Yeah.
lose. I was like on the bottom of rock bottom and was like, the only place to go is up. So that's good news.
Yeah.
And I decided that day, July 9th, 2016, that like I'm going to do self-care all day today until
Mhm.
I feel better. And then tomorrow, if I still don't feel better, I'm going to do it all day again tomorrow before I have to go back to work on Monday. And so I searched for guided meditations on YouTube. That was like all I put in. And one of the first ones that I listened to was a general well-being meditation by Abraham Hicks.
Yes.
And that led me to the Abraham Hicks Good Morning video. And that felt like that's how she says in the book, like how to recognize that outer teacher is that basically like you relax when you
Yeah.
hear what they say. Like it relaxes you, it puts you at ease.
At ease.
That's a sign that this is your teacher, and that maybe they do disturb you or question some things that, like you'd rather maybe not look at, but like they're ultimately coming from a place of love and compassion and like pointing you back inside of yourself, of
Mhm.
like how to connect with your own inner teacher. And I didn't even know the word resonance. I had no idea what that meant. And I resonated with Abraham Hicks like as soon as I heard them. And I still go back. I mean, that was 6 years ago, and I still go back often to that material. And then I kind of think like, kind of all of them. Like, I've definitely, like Brene Brown's TED talk on vulnerability, that
Yeah.
sucker changed my life. Like,
Mhm.
again, that was like my intro to even considering that I'm an emotional being,
Mhm.
and that was like such a huge doorway that needed to open. And so much came after that. And like, obviously, Brene Brown isn't walking beside me through my entire life, but if she hadn't helped me open that door, then like the rest of it couldn't have flowed. So I feel like I have several along those lines of like, you know, people that exist in the world and they're doing their thing. And like Liz Gilbert's a perfect example that I've been listening to recently, like all of her interviews. um, she has interviews going back like 10 years, and I've never paid attention. I've never, like, I've known about her and I appreciate Eat, Pray, Love. I watched the movie, I never read the book, but like
Mhm.
that's all I knew about her. And then these last few months have been like falling down the rabbit hole of like listening to every interview she's ever given, because it relaxes me. It
I'm writing
feels,
it down.
Liz Gilbert. Oh my, I have a whole playlist on my channel if you want
Okay.
to start with that, of like all her interviews, because she's a Pisces North Node like me. And so she's like 50, I think, maybe a little bit older than that. And so I feel like she's like the Pisces North Node, but like with 20 extra years on me of like opening up to divine timing and acceptance of reality. And like she just has such a way about her of like being in this world and feeling good while doing it. And she's like another, like the only other person that I've ever heard in this world say, my full-time job is managing my mental health. Like I thought I made that up. I thought I was like making a funny joke when I would say that. And she's like been saying it for years. And I'm like,
Oh,
oh my
wow.
God, like again, like here's a person in the world that like opens new possibilities for me. And I feel like that's, you need those. And so
Yeah.
like in the meeting the teacher chapter, like the first part is about the outer teachers, and then she goes into like the inner teacher and meeting the inner teacher. But like can you think of some like teachers that have shown up in your world?
Well, actually, I'm glad that you brought up the Abraham Hicks, because I had the same experience, probably around the same time you did. And one thing led to another, more teachers. And I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't make that connection.
Oh,
I
cool.
think there was I was feeling a little bit like I've been on my own, which can't possibly be true. So you pointed that out to me. In fact, discovering you has
Oh,
helped me immensely. So you are.
I'm a teacher. Oh, I
You.
love that. You gotta know I love that.
Yeah. So you brought so much, so many things to think about and different things for me to discover. So thank you.
Yeah, you're
And
so
I think Renee, the thing is still, is it true? Is it true?
Byron Katie.
That Brene, is it Brene Brown, right?
Byron Katie.
Byron
Is
Katie.
it true?
Yeah.
Yeah. Brene Brown is like vulnerability and shame and emotion.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, so these have been good tools for me. And I think even in this book, she does talk about, is it true? A few times she mentions that. Yeah.
That's how I found Byron Katie was
Oh,
through
through
this
this?
book. Yes, because like she uses the work as an exercise, maybe in part one or part two, and then again at the end. There's like two different places where she uses Byron Katie's exercises as her exercises in that chapter or whatever. And I was like, this is incredible. Wait, who is this? I've never heard of her. And I went on YouTube and started watching videos and had a spiritual awakening like all by itself with Byron Katie. So yeah, that's another one that I think they find you when you need what they have, you know, like when you're ready for it, when you're open to it. Like there's that readiness piece of, I think, what did she say in the book? Something like a soul teacher usually appears right after the hero has accepted a call to adventure or something like that. Like as soon as the person is like ready to go and expand,
Yeah.
then the teacher, like there's room for the teacher to come in. But like if the person's happy where they are, like you don't need to learn anything. Like you don't need a
That's
teacher. You're good.
you just made me think Joseph Campbell, another made a huge
What does he
impact.
like? What's his message? Because I think I've heard of him, but I've definitely never looked into anything.
He's the man that said, follow your bliss. And that's the hero's journey. He was a professor. Mythology was his study. Sarah Lawrence, he was a professor at Sarah Lawrence. So he has written so many books about mythology and the hero's journey, and how we can take all these different mythology and how it really affects, or how we can see ourselves in these stories. And I highly recommend it. And there's a really interesting series that was on public television whenever they were doing fundraisers with, I can't remember the interviewer, but he's awesome too. And I accidentally happened to be in a place where I was able to watch this series, and I was in my 20s and I'm in my 50s now, and it changed so many. It just did so much for me. So it's a real important. Bill Moyers is the interviewer. And if you have a chance and you're online, I definitely recommend you try to see a few of these. Joseph Campbell is an amazing man, and just watching him and listening to him, he's got a certain demeanor that just like a grandfather type that just did that to me. I was relaxed and so interested listening to these stories, and he took such delight in sharing them. So
Yeah.
there's a teacher. Thanks for the talk. And she mentioned Joseph Campbell in it. Yeah.
That's awesome. See, I'll bet there are so many. Like when
Yeah.
you really think about like how many soul teachers have you ever come across? Because I know there's so many like books or authors or like speakers or TED Talks or friends and relatives and relationships and like, oh my gosh, like everywhere you look, you're learning something. Like
Yeah.
it does find you when you're ready for it. Because I think, you know, coming to what Abraham was teaching was my introduction into like the spiritual world. And I'm a Virgo South node, and I'm very much of the earthly plane. And so, what Abraham was talking about with like mass consciousness and source energy and like all of these unseen forces that are like pulling on us all the time, and energy and frequency, and like all of these ideas that you can't see it. Like you can maybe measure it with some of our more advanced like scientific tools that we have today, but like the unseen, and it just like blew my world wide open. And I think if I hadn't been on rock bottom, I don't think I would have been able to sustain listening to that, because it contradicted my worldview like hardcore. It like shattered it to the point where you can't keep seeing the world the way you did and learn what she's trying to teach you all at the same time. So yeah, it's like I think the readiness piece is something to be really grateful for too, as far as like kind of where were you when the teacher appeared, and like the half of that that you cultivated, like the red
Yeah.
that you brought, and the teacher's wisdom was great, yes, but the only reason you heard it was because that was like truly what you were ready for, you know?
I love that. Think about where, yeah, that's good.
Well, because like another way of like giving ourselves grace and letting ourselves off the hook of like, oh, I wish I would have learned that 20 years ago, or like those kinds of things that I know, like I wish I would have gotten there sooner. Like I feel like that's kind of a common thing that we can say to ourselves. And
Yeah.
I don't think it could have happened any other way, you know? I think like all the suffering that led me to be where I was when I was ready to listen to Abraham, like I am so freaking grateful that I found her and everything that that opened up in my world, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. And at that point you're saying I wouldn't trade that suffering for anything. And to me
Yep.
that's like just another level of melting, and like you weren't off schedule. That was part of it. You know, as much as it fucking sucked, like it was part of it. That was part of how you learned what you learned. Like that was the question, so that the answer made sense.
Yeah. When I hear you say that, and that actually is calming, that's a relief, or it resonates, it makes sense. And it takes the pressure off, that internal thing where kind of where we beat ourselves up because we're not at that imaginary there that we think we're supposed to
Right.
be at.
The top of Mount Delectable that doesn't exist anyway.
Right?
Exactly.
And if we just stop and just take stock of what we have, I don't know, that makes me feel good. I feel better about that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, and I think too, like So that's how we recognize the teachers like in the outer world, is that they say things like that to us. And I do think that those teachers that we find in the outer world, they plant things in our brains that then we start to say these things to ourselves. Like Maddie is a perfect example of this, where she is like freaking constantly saying, give yourself grace, no matter what I say, no matter how hard I'm being on myself. She's like, you've got to give yourself grace. And now when I'm like, oh no, give yourself grace. Like now it's me telling me, my inner teacher knows to say that to me now. And like my inner teacher can say, everything is always working out for you,
Yes.
because Abraham like pounded it into my consciousness, not literally, obviously. But like, I do think that the outer teacher, like it does help us develop that inner teacher who can talk to us and let us off the hook and take the pressure away, and like where we can do that for ourselves. You know, I think that is like kind of what she's saying, as far as the teacher who's going to walk you all the way there is that one where it's you
That's it.
talking to
It's you.
yourself.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. Which I would imagine, like, again, you could probably spot where like your inner teacher and like that source of your own wisdom, like, is just more and more and more. Like, obviously, it'd be great if, again, I was there, like over there where I want to be. But that's what I'm saying. Like, even after like all of the things that I've processed, listening to her go through the do not mention zones, I mean, they were like popcorn in my freaking brain of like all the hell gates I haven't looked at yet. So it's like, yeah, there's like a calming in, I've already come a long ways and I'm doing it and I'm headed in the right direction. And that's kind of the best it's ever going to be. You know? Which, again, depending on where you're coming from, can be really disheartening, or it can feel really relaxing. And that's where like you could hear the same thing and have two completely different reactions to it. And that's where, you know, some people, like, that's not your teacher. Like I've introduced Abraham to a lot of people over the years, and I would say like maybe one or two of them like clicked in with it, and the rest of them were like, no, like just no.
Here. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, what is that? What is that? And I'm like, they're not ready. They don't have a question that she's answering. They didn't live that question. I did. And that's why her answers sound so good to me.
Yep.
And, you know, it kind of helps me from being on this side of it, as far as like some people feel like my answers are relaxing and some people feel like they're terrible. And it's like, if you resonate with it, then keep listening. And if you don't, then go somewhere else and listen to something that does make
Yeah.
you feel good, because that's all I want is for you to
Yeah.
feel better. And if I'm not doing it for you, by all
Right.
means, yeah.
Mm.
Being a source of our own inner wisdom. I feel like that inner teacher, inner wisdom, intuition, like it's kind of all the same thing. And like it, in my inner world, it like speaks to me through resonance. Like it very, very rarely says words to me. Every once in a great while. Like when I canceled my wedding, it came through loud and clear and said, you have to do this.
Yeah.
And I was crying because I knew before I even like got done thinking the thought that it's true. And yeah, like that inner wisdom can come through as a voice. But for me, like moment to moment, it's more the way my body feels. Like, does something tense me up, or does something like relax me and have me feeling even more safe and at ease in the world? And I think that's how I understand the inner teacher, is just, do you feel better? Then that's your inner teacher talking to you.
Yeah.
And it's that simple. It doesn't have to sound fancy or use words even, to just let you know like, hey, you're on the right track. That's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. I think it can be subtle, but there are big things too. Like you mentioned, canceling your wedding. It came through loud and clear, and you had the courage to just step up for yourself and say this isn't right because you know the reactions you're going to get. So you listened to it and you followed
That
through.
was the most interesting part, because really what I had the courage to do was schedule an emergency 2 hour session with my therapist. That was
Oh,
all I did at
yeah,
first, was like, go talk to her. And
yeah.
like, what am I going to do? Because exactly what you said, like, everybody's going to be so mad at me. They're going to think less of me because I canceled and like went back on my word. I broke my commitment. I dishonored my family's name, like whatever you could think to
It's
tell
a
yourself.
big thing. Yeah.
And she basically did the whole Byron Katie thing on me. She's like, do you know that that's true? Do you know that that's how they're going to react? Are you sure? And I'm like, no. And then we backed it up to like, what do you really want? You know, like if you went forward with this wedding, why would you be doing that? And the answer was fear. That's the
Yeah.
only reason. And at that point, it was like, yeah, I don't want that. That's not my values. Like there's nothing for me here other than living up to a sense of obligation.
Right.
And that's actually bringing in obligation to the conversation. That's kind of where she starts as far as like
Yep.
exploring your dark wood of error ways. And one of the questions was like, are you doing things because you feel obligated, or like how often? And like, do you hang out with people that you genuinely don't enjoy their company? Do you like go to your job even though you hate it? Like those kinds of thoughts. And another way that I heard that asked here recently was, what are you tolerating? What
Mhm.
in your world is there because you tolerate it? And she asked that question to somebody one time, or no, this was Kemi in the Power Book that said this one. But yeah, like asked this question one time to somebody of like, what are you tolerating? And the woman changed her whole life because she realized she's tolerating her job, she's tolerating her marriage, she's tolerating like so many freaking things. So she left her job, she goes to counseling with her husband. Like, what are you tolerating? Like, why are you still doing that instead of following your true nature, essentially, of like, what do you really want? And yeah, like i I didn't feel courageous in doing it, like walking away from that wedding. I felt more like it was going to be a trap of like, it's already bad and we're not even married yet.
Yeah.
So what are you doing? Like it's not going to get better. Everybody says, like, I'm a big fan of not listening to what everybody says, but everybody says like this is the best. The engagement, like after you're married, like you're there. And I'm like, it's not good now.
Yeah.
It felt like a trap, and I felt like I was saving myself. It felt honestly kind of cowardly, to be perfectly honest. It did not feel courageous. And then the reactions came in, and the consensus was that it was courageous. And I'm like, what the hell is happening here? Because like you're supposed to be mad, first of all, and you're not. Nobody was. Nobody other than Jason and his mom were upset with me. And everybody else like welcomed me with open arms and commended me for the courage. And I'm like, yeah, it was a very confusing experience,
Yeah.
because what I think what it looks like on the outside and what it feels like on the inside can be two completely different things. But I knew at the end of the day, like, this is not what I want. Like, this is outside of my true nature. The only reason I'm here is because I'm late 20s and it's time to get married and have kids. And that was like, it was the musical chairs relationship at its finest of like, I was ready, he was ready, we're going to get married. And that was all it was. Yeah, I had to pull the ripcord on that one.
Yeah. Hmm.
Not always easy, but in my
No.
experience, the reactions not usually as horrific as you expect for them to be, even though like I think that's kind of previewing maybe even into the inferno. That's where you meet your demons face to face and they say things like, you shouldn't cancel your wedding because you're breaking your commitment and you've got to keep your word. Like that's the kind of shit the demons are saying. And that's why you don't go through the hell gate into the inferno, because you think they're right. And that's why you stay in the dark wood of error. And I knew, like, it felt like a trap. That's the best word for it. And I'm like, I can't marry him. I can't willingly walk into a trap. Like that doesn't sound smart, like it was like self-preservation at its finest, I think. And yeah, my inner wisdom like broke through loud and clear.
Yes.
It's like a definitive, you're not doing this. This is not you.
Yep. That inner voice.
Yeah.
Were you at the software company at this time too?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And he had worked there. He didn't at that time. He had left and gone to a different job. But when we started dating, he and I both worked there. And then we got engaged and he and I still worked there. And then it was then that he went and got a different job. So then by the time that I called it off, it was like everybody was like, oh my gosh, how was your wedding? How was the honeymoon? How's Jason? Like at the Christmas party, oh, where's Jason? Is he not here? Haven't been together for 5 months, but thank you for asking. If I ever talk to him again, I'll tell him you asked about him. You and the 400 other people we work with.
Oh God.
That was definitely the worst part. Nobody was I actually started having fun with it. That was like kind of the morbid humor, like coming to the surface was like so many people, like one person at a time asking me like, oh my gosh, how was your wedding? How was your honeymoon? And I started just like deadpan telling them, like, I called it off 3 weeks before or 6 weeks before it happened. We didn't go. And you should see the look on their faces. Like they would give anything to be anywhere besides where they were right now. And I'm like, this is what you get for asking personal questions of somebody else's life where you have no business. You walked into my life and want answers, and I'll give them to you. And now how do you feel? Because they're like red face, no words, turn around, walk away. Some of them were like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. It's like, it was for the best. It really was. Like, and they're like trying to console me. I'm like, this was 6 months ago. You're late to the party. It was so, yeah, I just started having fun with it because they just wouldn't stop asking. It was like 8 months of them asking, where's Jason? Yeah, good times. Because it was like the inferno for 8 months, like just burning it away, giving a shit, burning away my give a shit a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. I don't care. I don't care. I'm not going to try to protect your feelings while you're traipsing through my private life.
Right. I love that.
That's not my job.
I love that.
Yeah.
The chapter, where's Jason?
For real. It just got to be comical to where when somebody would ask me, and that was like, yeah, it was like still February, like literally 7 or 8 months later. And there's still,
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how he is. What do you mean? Well, we broke up 7 months ago. And yeah, that's not a thing anymore. But thank you for bringing it up. I really appreciate the reminder. Now we're on an elevator and we have 7 more floors. So this is awkward. Look what you did. God damn it. Mind your business. Yeah. The demons in the inferno, they say lots of things that sound somewhat harmless, They sound like culture. That's basically like the choir of the demons that we're going to talk about next time when we get to the inferno part. It's like that's really like the voice of our culture trying to keep us in the box where culture thinks we belong. And you can stay there as long as you want, and you can come out when you want. And coming out is hard, and there's a reason why we stay in for so long. So we let ourselves off the hook as best we can, and then we pop ourselves out like one little piece at a time.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And I'm doing this. I want that. I shall has. Totally.
Yeah,
why not? What else you got going on?
I don't have anything going on.
This is like when I got to the end of the book, like The Way of Integrity, I got to the last little bit, and I just was like filled with this book club. Like, there is nothing else I would rather do than these 4 sessions over 4 months that are going to take us into the beginning of 2023 and create a space to have this conversation. I loved the material so much. Like, all I want is to talk about this with somebody. Somebody please read the book and come over here and talk to me about it. So thank you, Myra. Oh my gosh. Yay.
Oh,
Yay.
that's right.
So yeah, I'm super stoked. This was awesome, I think. Like, just a free-flowing conversation. That's like as good as it gets, I think. I got a note about Joseph Campbell. I'm gonna go look him up and see what he's got to say. See if I can find an interview.
Yep, I got Liz Gilbert over here, so
Yeah, check out that playlist.
yeah.
As far as like, I am gonna put a few videos from Martha Beck interviews like in the description on this recording, especially the one where she says, I threw my life away and it wasn't worth keeping anyway. And yeah, like when you walk the path of integrity, the way of integrity, like you're giving up your current self, but like what are you clinging to anyway? depending
Yeah.
on depending on where you are and if you're ready for that. And if you are, oh my gosh, I feel like this book is so helpful, like puts it into practical steps of like, ask yourself this question and then this question. So yeah, we'll carry on next time with part 2, but I think we could wrap it up there.
That sounds good.
Yeah, this was so fun, Myra. Thank you for joining me and having this conversation and sharing all the things that you did. Yeah, this was awesome. Can't wait for the next one.
Agreed.
Agreed. Well, you have a great rest of your Saturday. Okay. And I'll see you soon.
Okay, take
Okay.
care.
Bye.
Bye.